It made for such a refreshing change this week, I almost pinched myself. Indeed, it's as likely as a meaningful discussion about nuclear fission on Love Island or England winning a World Cup penalty shootout. The dramatic occurrence, a fulsome apology from a politician, and not just any politician, but Prime Minister Theresa May. In a searingly honest interview, she admitted she botched her initial reaction to the Grenfell fire tragedy, which happened 12 months ago this week. She spoke of her regret at not meeting with survivors or victims' families the first time she visited. She was, of course, right. Compare her visit when she met only firefighters and was hurried away by protection officers with that of the Queen just days later, who was greeted with cheers and smiles and mixed openly with all and sundry. It's well known Mrs May has a strong faith. Well, confession might be good for the soul, but it's also heartening to see someone able to say sorry.
I think we all had our minute silence, and we should remember today what happened at Grenfell. It was just down the road from me, and I was actually on site when the Queen came for the first time, also when Sadiq, the mayor, came for the first time, and Theresa May has admitted that she got her initial response wrong. She hasn't actually, I don't think, acknowledged the entire extent to which she got it wrong. She allowed the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea to take a terrible hit on the handling of what turned out to be the biggest fire in this country since the Second World War. The council were on the ground right from the beginning, because I was there too and I could see them. They weren't wearing identifying any, because they didn't. It all happened so unexpectedly. She announced that within 3 weeks, over 200 people would be rehoused. That was an absolutely impossible thing for the council to do. That was
her aspiration.
Which has left the council. Then she and the communities, then Communities Secretary Sajid Javid, essentially blamed the council for the fact that in a national emergency, one borough did not handle it particularly brilliantly. Could any borough have handled it? So she really left them out to dry. She hasn't apologised to them, to the extent that even at the vigils and the services, the council staff who actually were on the ground, did not sleep, worked day and night, were told not to attend because they might be in danger. So yes, she was right to apologise. I don't think she's gone far enough.
Well, let's just, for perhaps viewers who are not fully up to speed, let's go back to where we were roughly 12 months ago, and this is what happened when Mrs May made her first visit.
What is Theresa May scared of? Why isn't she down here comforting people? Yeah, you went and saw some firemen and they're talking about security risk. Security risk, she's a disgrace.
And that you can't actually see, but that, or maybe just make out that that is Mrs May being bundled into the car, as I mentioned earlier, and driven off at high speed with a police guard. And here is Mrs May 12 months on.
I didn't, of course, on that first visit, meet members of the community or survivors. And I'm sorry for not having met them then. I regret that, because I think people perhaps felt that they wanted those of us in power to know that, to know that we had understood and recognised what had happened, and perhaps felt that not meeting them immediately meant that I didn't care, and that was never the case.
Michelle, just moving on a little bit from what she did, does an apology embolden a politician or weaken them, do you think?
No, I think it's a good thing. I think to have the humility to actually be able to reflect and say, do you know what, I made a mistake and this was wrong and I apologise. I think that can only ever be a good thing. But I do think, how would you even make that decision in the first place? Because I just think, take politics and everything aside, as a person, as a human being, if this is your remit, if your remit is to protect people, make sure people are safe, when something has happened that's so tragic, just as a human being, I would like to just go and be around and say, you know, hi, just to be around. Unfortunately, though, when you do see those scenes, it's not as simple as what I'm making it out in my own mind.
There was
saying,
a lot of
just
anger very quickly, because I was there and I saw Sadiq actually needed protection as well.
Yeah, because would it have helped?
I can understand why she didn't want to walk into the Lion's Den.
I was covering for James on LBC at that time, and I was covering this live as it unfolded. It's the only ever time I've cried on radio, to be honest. It was tragic and terrible, and I was very, very angry, not just at the housing minister, who became her chief of staff, but also the council that you've spoken about. I don't know the ins and outs of what you've mentioned, but I at the time was very angry. It's heartening to see an apology, though I'm not the one that can accept that apology on behalf of the survivors. And though I've got to say, it's more than Tony Blair did for the Iraq War. So that is, to your point, it is something that is interesting. But before you do that, there's something we just want to have a look at.
All of it. And can we just say that they have now housed 40% of Grenfell survivors.
But talking of gestures that mean something, I think this particular one is very meaningful. So I just want to show you it. It really did touch my heart.
And then, out of the blue, as we were broadcasting live, a special tribute.
You can see there actually a London Underground tube has stopped there, and the whistle on the tube being blown there just to mark this event being held here in the centre of London. And actually, the tube driver there holding a green banner, being met with applause there.
See, that's beautiful, wonderful, human. It was a Sky News report on Wednesday night. It unfolded without anyone knowing it was coming.
Before the end of it. Just to explain for viewers around the country, you go green for Grenfell. Everybody in London probably knows. If you're out of London,
and they lit the tower last night.
So you go green for Grenfell. Does an apology strengthen a politician?
I think we should take apologies on good faith, so I welcome the apology. I maybe have a longer memory than you, Nick. I remember this time a year ago, the week that this happened, having an argument with you.
Doesn't sound like us.
And I accused Theresa May of callousness, and you absolutely shut me down and said that's ridiculous, it's an appropriate response for a Prime Minister. So it seems like you've moved on in your compassion too.
I don't think she had a choice. If your protection officers are saying, I take Rachel's point, in a perfect world she would have handled it differently.
She had just lost the election. She was very, very much at the weakest point in her premiership.
At what the kind of conduct I would have liked to have seen from our Prime Minister,
the election. She lost her majority.
Which we saw from the Leader of the Opposition instead. This is Jeremy Corbyn at Grenfell. And I don't think that this was a cynical move to do what voters wanted. It seemed like a very human response, the kind of thing you want from somebody who genuinely feels compassion for people who have just been through the most horrific tragedy, and understanding that his role is to be there listening to them and comforting them.
I think you have to say, I mean, subsequently, and some of you will scoff at this, and I don't recall that clash, but subsequently Mrs May has had some of the survivors and victims, and she's prayed with them. Now, you can laugh at that, but no, but some might, I'm so sorry, some might, but that actually for her is about as fair, and I think she probably feels it as keenly as anything in her whole administration. Majid, you want to
I would just say that was a very human response.
Yeah, I don't think he's being apologetic. Well, he is apologetic, but I think he's acting as a human being.
This isn't just about politics, because, the whole thing about Grenfell is that the people involved feel that they were so let down, that their concerns weren't listened to, they were so marginalised, they were ignored, they were even bullied. They were even bullied, and that's what the inquiry was looking into. But then to have the Prime Minister not appear to have that compassion compounded that very legitimate sense of grievance. So it wasn't like other situations in which a Prime Minister doesn't go and hug people. This was very, very different and unique.